My children dropped me off at Sunny Meadows Retirement Home like I was nothing but a piece of trash. They didn't know about the millions I wouldn't be leaving them. "Mom, it's for the best," Derek said, patting my hand like I was some fragile porcelain doll. His wife Allison stood behind him, already looking at her watch. My daughter Jennifer had claimed a work emergency and couldn't even show up. Michael, my youngest, at least had the decency to look ashamed as he carried my single suitcase into this place that smelled of disinfectant and lost dreams. "We'll visit every Sunday," Derek promised. I'd heard those words before when they put their childhood dog in a kennel during our family vacation to Florida in 1995. They'd forgotten to visit the kennel for 3 days. I watched from the window as they pulled away in Derek's shiny BMW. Not one of them looked back, not even Michael. The gray clouds outside matched my mood perfectly. Nurse Patty, a plump woman with tired eyes and a forced smile, showed me to my room. The space was half the size of my bathroom at home, with institutional beige walls and a narrow bed that looked about as comfortable as a park bench. "Dinner's at 5, she said, already backing toward the door. "TV room down the hall, emergency button by the bed." And just like that, I was alone. I shuffled to the bed and sat down, my arthritic knees protesting. The weight of my situation pressed down on me like a physical thing. I'd raised 3 successful children, a surgeon, a lawyer, and a finance executive. I'd attended every soccer game, piano recital, and school play. I'd nursed them through chicken pox and broken hearts. I'd taken out a second mortgage to pay for their college tuitions. And my reward? A room at Sunny Meadows, where nothing was sunny, and the only meadow was the cemetery I could see from my window. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope my sister Margaret's attorney had given me just 3 days ago. Inside was a check for $7 million. My sister, who never had children of her own, had left everything to me when she passed last month. "She wanted you to enjoy your golden years," the attorney had said. I hadn't told my children about the inheritance. I'd planned to surprise them, to help them with their mortgages and set up college funds for my grandchildren. I'd even considered taking the whole family on a luxury cruise. But as I sat in that sterile room, listening to someone down the hall coughing incessantly, my thoughts darkened. Why should I give them anything? Derek, with his country club membership and summer home in the Hamptons. Jennifer, with her designer wardrobe and monthly trips to the spa. Michael, with his sports car collection. None of them needed my money, and none of them wanted me. I tucked the check back into my purse and pulled out the photo I kept of Margaret and me, taken at Coney Island in 1962. We were laughing, our arms around each other, ice cream cones in hand. Margaret never had much, but she'd always been generous with what she did have. "What would you do, Maggie?" I whispered to her smiling face. I knew the answer already. She'd say life is too short for bitterness, but she hadn't been abandoned by her children. I looked at the phone on the bedside table. I could call them right now, tell them about the money, watch how fast they'd come running back. But something stopped me. A plan was forming in my mind, a plan that would show them exactly what they'd thrown away. Little did they know, I wasn't going to spend my final years rotting away in this place. I had 7 million reasons to rewrite the ending to my story. The next morning, I woke to the sound of a medication cart rattling past my door. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then reality crashed down on me like a wave. Sunny Meadows. Abandoned. $7 million. I pulled myself up and shuffled to the tiny bathroom. The face that stared back at me from the mirror looked tired and defeated. I'd always prided myself on my appearance, but somewhere along the way, I'd stopped seeing myself. I'd become invisible, first to my children, then to myself. "Not anymore," I whispered to my reflection. At breakfast in the communal dining room, I found myself seated with three other women. Betty, a former librarian with a sharp wit despite her advanced dementia, Mabel, who spoke mostly about her cats, though I suspected they'd all passed years ago, and Pearl, elegant even in her standard issue sweatpants, who'd been a dancer in her youth. "First day?" Pearl asked, passing me the sugar for my watery coffee. I nodded. "Children or spouse?" she continued, cutting her rubbery scrambled eggs with surgical precision. "Children," I replied. She nodded knowingly. "Same here. 3 boys. They visit on Christmas and my birthday, if they remember." "I have 3 too. They promise to visit every Sunday." Pearl snorted. "Check back with me in a month." After breakfast, I attended the morning activities, a mind-numbing exercise class where we sat in chairs and lifted 1-pound weights, followed by a depressing craft session making picture frames from popsicle sticks. By lunchtime, I was ready to scream. Instead, I went back to my room and called a taxi. The driver looked surprised when I gave him the address of First National Bank. "You sure that's where you want to go, ma'am?" he asked, eyeing my Sunny Meadows visitor badge that I hadn't bothered to remove. "Absolutely," I said. At the bank, I spoke with a financial advisor named Kevin, who looked young enough to be my grandson, but he took me seriously when I told him I needed to deposit a $7 million check and discuss investment options. His eyes widened when I showed him the check, but to his credit, he quickly composed himself. "Of course, Mrs. Wilson, let's move to our private conference room." For the next 2 hours, Kevin outlined various investment strategies. I listened carefully, asked questions, and made decisions. By the time I left, I had opened several accounts, invested in a diverse portfolio, and arranged for a monthly allowance to be deposited into my checking account. I felt more alive than I had in years. On the way back to Sunny Meadows, I had the taxi driver stop at a small boutique I'd noticed. Inside, I purchased 3 new outfits. Nothing extravagant, but certainly better than what I'd brought to the home. "Special occasion?" the saleswoman asked as she rang up my purchases. "You could say that," I replied. "I'm starting a new life." When I returned to Sunny Meadows, Nurse Patty raised an eyebrow at my shopping bags, but said nothing. I spent the rest of the afternoon planning. By dinner time, I had a clear vision of what I needed to do. Sunday was just 3 days away. My children had promised to visit. I wondered if they would actually show up and what they would think when they discovered I wasn't sitting around waiting for them. That night, as I lay in the uncomfortable bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time, a sense of purpose. And beneath that, something else was bubbling up, something that felt dangerously like revenge. Sunday arrived with rain pattering against my window. I'd been at Sunny Meadows for 4 days, and they had been 4 of the longest days of my life. The monotony was broken only by Pearl's sarcastic commentary during meals and my secret planning sessions in my room. I dressed carefully in one of my new outfits, a light blue blouse with matching slacks, and applied makeup for the first time since arriving. As I swiped on lipstick, I noticed my hand was trembling slightly. Whether from anticipation or anxiety, I couldn't tell. The visitors' lounge filled quickly after lunch. Family members arrived bearing flowers, homemade cookies, and guilty smiles. I sat in a corner armchair, watching the door. 1 o'clock came and went, then 2. By 3, the lounge had mostly emptied. "Looks like we're in the same boat," Pearl said, settling into the chair beside me. "My youngest called. Something about his son's soccer tournament." She shrugged, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. I was about to respond when the front doors opened and Derek walked in, alone. "Mom," he said, bending to kiss my cheek. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible." "Where are Jennifer and Michael?" I asked, noting how he avoided my eyes. "Jen's got that big case, you know, and Mike's out of town for work." He sat across from me, already fidgeting. "So, how are you settling in?"
For the next 20 minutes, Derek made stilted conversation while checking his phone every few minutes. He didn't comment on my new outfit or the makeup. He asked no questions about my life at Sunny Meadows. Instead, he talked about his promotion, Allison's garden club victories, and his daughter's college applications. "I should get going," he finally said, standing up. "The Petersons invited us for dinner." I nodded, unsurprised. "Before you go, could you help me with something? I need to make some financial decisions now that I'm here, and I'm a bit confused about the options." Derek's face brightened. Financial matters were his territory. "Of course, Mom. What do you need to know?" I pulled out some papers from my purse, printouts Kevin had given me about retirement planning. "I'm trying to understand these investment options, and I'm worried about having enough to stay here long term." Derek skimmed the papers, his brow furrowing. "Mom, these are for people with substantial assets. Your savings won't last more than a few years here." "That's what I'm worried about," I said, my voice small and frightened, a performance I'd practiced all morning. "Don't worry," Derek patted my hand. "We'll figure something out. Maybe we can sell the house for more than we thought." My house, the home where I'd raised them, the place where their father had died, they were already counting the profits. "Maybe," I murmured. "I just don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden, Mom," Derek said automatically, the lie slipping easily from his lips. "Listen, I'll talk to Jen and Mike. Maybe we can all contribute to a fund for your care." I nodded gratefully, playing my part. "That would be wonderful, dear." As he left, promising to visit again next Sunday, I watched him walk to his car without a backward glance, just like the day they dropped me off. Pearl, who'd witnessed the entire exchange, raised an eyebrow. "That your son?" "One of 'em," I replied. "Piece of work," she muttered. I smiled for the first day that day. "You have no idea." Back in my room, I made a phone call to a real estate agent I'd researched online. "Yes," I confirmed, "I want to list my house immediately, and I'd like to start looking at condos in Palm Beach." The wheels were now in motion. Soon, my children would discover that their safety net, my house, and the inheritance they expected was gone. But that was just the beginning of my plan. I lay in bed that night, thoughts swirling. Was I being petty? Vindictive? Perhaps, but as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder what their faces would look like when they realized what they had thrown away.
3 weeks passed. Derek visited once more. Jennifer called twice but never showed up. And Michael sent a generic thinking of you card with no personal message inside. Each missed visit, each forgotten call, each empty gesture only strengthened my resolve. Meanwhile, I'd been busy. My house sold within days. The real estate market was booming and the location was prime. I worked with the agent remotely, signing papers that Nurse Patty witnessed for me. The profit from the sale was substantial, adding to my growing nest egg. I'd also found a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in Palm Beach, just 2 blocks from the ocean. The photos showed sun-drenched rooms, a spacious balcony, and a community pool. I made an offer, which was accepted. But my most significant move was hiring Oliver Preston, an excellent elder law attorney Pearl had recommended. "He helped me protect my assets from my vulture children," she'd said over our morning coffee. Oliver visited me at Sunny Meadows, his silver hair and bow tie giving him an air of old-world dignity. He listened carefully as I explained my situation and what I wanted to do. "It's entirely doable," he said, making notes in a leather-bound portfolio. "We can establish a trust that gives you complete control of your assets while you're alive. As for the inheritance,"
He glanced up, his eyes twinkling. "We have several options that might prove quite educational for your children." By the end of our meeting, I had a comprehensive estate plan that would ensure my money went exactly where I wanted it to go, and not necessarily to my ungrateful children. As Oliver packed up his briefcase, he paused. "Mrs. Wilson, if I may ask, have you considered telling your children about your inheritance? Perhaps it would change how they treat you." I thought about it for a moment. If I have to buy their love and attention, do I really have it at all? He nodded slowly. A wise perspective, though I must say I've rarely seen a client handle abandonment with such creative problem-solving. After he left, I sat by my window, watching residents in the garden below. Some were with family members, adult children pushing wheelchairs, grandchildren running on the lawn. I felt a pang of envy, quickly followed by anger. My children had chosen to push me aside, to warehouse me while they continued their busy, important lives. Money shouldn't change that equation, yet I knew it would. The moment they learned about my millions, they'd be back, full of excuses and renewed devotion. The thought made me sick. That evening, as I picked at my bland dinner, Pearl slid into the seat across from me. "You look like you're plotting world domination," she observed. I smiled. "Just a small coup." "Need a co-conspirator?" she asked, her eyes bright with interest. For the first time since arriving at Sunny Meadows, I laughed genuinely. "Actually, I might. How do you feel about Palm Beach?" Pearl leaned forward. "I'm listening." By the time we finished our lime jello dessert, Pearl and I had formed an alliance. She had been a travel agent before retirement and still had connections. She would help me plan my escape from Sunny Meadows, and in return, I would invite her to visit me in Florida. It was the beginning of an unexpected friendship. That night, I dreamed of ocean breezes and new beginnings. But lurking beneath those pleasant visions was the knowledge that soon, very soon, my children would learn that actions have consequences, and their education was about to begin.
The call came while I was playing bridge with Pearl and 2 other residents. My new cell phone, a purchase that had raised Nurse Patty's eyebrows, vibrated in my pocket. "Mom?" Jennifer's voice was tight with panic. "Why is there a sold sign in front of the house?" I excused myself from the game and stepped into the hallway. "Hello, Jennifer. It's nice to hear from you after 5 weeks." She ignored the job. "The house, Mom. Mrs. Denton from next door called me. She said there are people measuring for new carpets. What's going on?" I kept my voice calm. "I sold it." Silence stretched across the line, followed by a strangled, "You what?" "I sold the house," I repeated. "I won't be needing it anymore." But, Jennifer sputtered, "You can't just sell the house. What about all our things? What about all the memories?" By our things, she meant the boxes of college textbooks and high school trophies she'd never bothered to retrieve. By memories, she meant the inheritance she'd expected to receive when the property eventually became hers. "The new owners are letting me clear everything out next week. If you want anything, you should come by on Wednesday. The donation truck arrives Thursday morning." "Donation truck?" Her voice rose an octave. "Mom, you can't donate Dad's things." "Your father has been gone for 12 years, Jennifer. And in those 12 years, none of you have wanted any of his belongings." My tone was matter-of-fact, not accusatory, which I knew would unsettle her more than anger. This is...
She seemed unable to find the right word. Practical, I supplied. Sunny Meadows is expensive. I needed the money. We would have helped, she protested. Would you? I asked quietly. The silence that followed was answer enough. Wednesday, 10 a.m. I'll have a car pick me up from here. If you want anything from the house, that's your chance. After we hung up, I returned to the bridge game, my hands steady despite the confrontation. Pearl gave me a questioning look, and I nodded slightly. Phase 1 was complete. Wednesday arrived crisp and clear. Oliver had arranged for a car service to pick me up from Sunny Meadows. The driver, a courteous man named Walter, helped me into the back seat with a gentleness I appreciated. When we pulled up to my former home, 3 cars were already in the driveway: Derek's BMW, Jennifer's Audi, and Michael's Porsche. The gang was all here. Walter helped me to the front door, which opened before I could reach for my keys. Derek stood there, his face a mask of concern that didn't reach his eyes. "Mom," he said, ushering me in, "we need to talk about this." Inside, the house was already half empty. Many of my belongings had been packed into boxes labeled for the move to Palm Beach. The rest were tagged for donation. My 3 children converged on me in the living room, where I settled into my favorite armchair, one of the few pieces of furniture remaining. "What's going on, Mom?" Michael asked. It was the first time I'd seen him since they'd left me at Sunny Meadows. He looked tan, probably from the Bahamas trip he'd mentioned in his card. "I'm simplifying my life," I said. The house was too much to maintain. "But you're not maintaining it," Jennifer pointed out. "You're at Sunny Meadows." I smiled thinly. "Exactly. No point in keeping it." Derek, ever the financial analyst, cut to the chase. "How much did you get it for?" Of course, that would be his first question. Not, "Are you okay?" or "What can we do to help?" Just, "How much?" "Enough," I said vaguely. "Now, did you want to look through things before the donation truck comes?" For the next hour, they picked through the house like vultures, claiming items they'd never shown interest in before. Jennifer wanted the silver tea service that had been my grandmother's. Derek took his father's watch collection. Michael loaded up artwork and first edition books. Not one of them asked about my plans. Not one mentioned the weekly visits they'd promised me. Not one seemed to care that I was sitting alone in an almost empty house that had once been filled with a family. As they carried their treasures to their luxury cars, I sat quietly, watching. Everything was unfolding exactly as I anticipated. They were showing me with every selfish action that I was making the right decision. What they didn't know was that this was just the beginning of their awakening. Soon, they would learn that their mother wasn't the docile, easily dismissed old woman they thought they were.
After the house clearing, my children's sudden interest in my life was almost comical. Derek called twice a week, Jennifer sent flowers to Sunny Meadows, and Michael actually visited, bringing his wife and children for the first time. During Michael's visit, my 7-year-old granddaughter Lily climbed onto my lap and whispered, "Daddy says we have to be extra nice to you now." The innocent honesty of a child, revealing what the adults tried to hide. I maintained the pretense that I had sold the house out of financial necessity. When they asked about my plans, I spoke vaguely about managing and getting by. I watched them exchange worried glances, no doubt calculating how my financial struggles might impact their own comfortable lives. Meanwhile, Pearl and I finalized our escape plan. My condo in Palm Beach would be ready in 2 weeks. I had already arranged for a moving company to deliver my saved belongings directly there. Oliver had handled the paperwork to release me from Sunny Meadows, something the facility administrators couldn't legally prevent, though they made their disappointment clear when I gave my notice. "We rarely see residents leave under their own power," the director said, when I informed her of my departure. Her tone suggested she thought I was making a mistake. "I'm not most residents," I replied. The day before my scheduled departure, all 3 of my children arrived at Sunny Meadows unannounced. They cornered me in my room, their faces serious. "Mom, we need to talk about your finances," Derek began, taking charge as usual. "We've been looking at your situation and we're concerned." "We want to help," Jennifer added, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We've come up with a plan," Michael said, pulling out a folder. "We can each contribute monthly to supplement your care here." I sat on my bed, watching them present their proposal as if they were in a business meeting. The folder contained spreadsheets showing how much each would contribute. Derek the most, of course, since he earned the highest salary, and projections of how long my supposed meager savings would last with their help. "That's very thoughtful," I said when they finished. "We want what's best for you, Mom," Jennifer said, squeezing my hand. The diamond on her finger caught the light, sparkling ostentatiously. "And what's that?" I asked. "For you to be safe and cared for here," Derek answered promptly. "This is the best place for someone in your situation." "My situation?" I repeated. Derek had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Your age, your health needs. You know." I nodded slowly. "And when did you all become so concerned about my welfare? Was it before or after you realized I'd sold the house you expected to inherit?" The room fell silent. Michael shifted uncomfortably, Jennifer examined her manicure, and Derek cleared his throat. "That's not fair, Mom," he finally said. "We've always cared about you." "Have you?" I asked, my voice gentle despite the anger simmering beneath. "When was the last time any of you called, just to talk? Not about money or the house or my care, but just to see how I was feeling. When was the last time you invited me to Sunday dinner or remembered my birthday without a last-minute card?" None of them could meet my eyes. "I raised you to be successful, and you are. I'm proud of that. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that success isn't measured by bank accounts or job titles. It's measured by how you treat people, especially the ones who would give everything for you." "Mom," Jennifer began, but I held up my hand. "I'm leaving Sunny Meadows tomorrow." 3 pairs of eyes widened in surprise. "Leaving?" Derek repeated. "To go where?" "I've purchased a condo in Palm Beach," I said, enjoying the shock on their faces. "I'm moving to Florida." "But you can't," Derek started. "You don't have the—" Jennifer began simultaneously. "How will you—" Michael sputtered. I smiled, savoring the moment. "I can, I do, and quite comfortably, thank you." Their confusion was almost palpable. "Good. Let them stew in it a bit longer." "I think it's time for you to go," I said, standing up. "I have packing to finish." As they filed out bewildered and off balance, I caught Michael giving me a curious, appraising look. Of my 3 children, he'd always been the most perceptive. I wondered if he was starting to put the pieces together. After they left, Pearl stopped by. "How'd it go?" she asked, sitting in my visitor chair. "Exactly as expected," I replied. "They're confused, but not asking the right questions yet." Pearl chuckled. "Just wait until they figure out there's more to the story." I nodded, a small smile playing at my lips. I have a feeling that revelation will come very soon. Palm Beach welcomed me with sunshine and salt-scented air. My condo exceeded expectations. Spacious, bright, with a balcony overlooking a courtyard filled with palm trees and flowering shrubs. The community pool sparkled invitingly, and the ocean was just a short walk away. I spent my first week settling in, arranging furniture, hanging artwork, and familiarizing myself with the neighborhood. I found a charming cafe where the staff quickly learned my name and coffee preference.
I discovered a bookstore with comfortable chairs and a friendly cat. I joined a walking group that met at sunrise for strolls along the beach. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Not someone's mother or grandmother, not an obligation or a burden, but simply myself, Evelyn Wilson, a woman with interests and opinions and a future still to be lived. I called Pearl often, updating her on my new life and listening to her sardonic reports from Sunny Meadows. She was planning to visit in a month, and I was already looking forward to showing her around. My children, meanwhile, had moved from confusion to concern. Their calls became more frequent, their questions more probing. How had I afforded the condo? Was I managing all right alone? Had I considered the medical care available? Each inquiry thinly disguised their real question. Where had the money come from? I deflected with vague answers, enjoying their bewilderment. Let them wonder a bit longer. Then, 3 weeks after my move, the situation escalated. My doorbell rang early one morning, and I opened it to find Jennifer standing there, designer sunglasses perched on her head, looking both out of place and irritated. "Jennifer," I said, genuinely surprised. "What are you doing here?" She pushed past me into the condo, her eyes scanning the space critically. "We've been worried sick about you, Mom. You barely answer your phone, you've moved to another state without consulting us, and none of this makes any sense." I closed the door and followed her into the living room. I wasn't aware I needed to consult with anyone about my life decisions. She turned to face me, arms crossed. "That's not fair. We're your family. We have a right to know what's going on." "Do you?" I asked, quietly. "The same way I had a right to be included in your lives before you decided I was too inconvenient to keep around?" Her face flushed. "That's not what happened." "Isn't it?" I gestured toward the couch. "Sit down, Jennifer." She sat, perching on the edge of the cushion as if afraid to get too comfortable. I settled into my favorite armchair across from her. "Would you like some coffee?" I offered. "No, I want answers. How are you affording this place? The HOA fees alone must be astronomical." "I have my resources," I said simply. "What resources?" she demanded. "You were a homemaker. Dad's pension barely covered property taxes on the house. Your Social Security is minimal. None of this makes any sense." I studied my daughter, my beautiful, ambitious, cold-hearted daughter who'd been too busy to visit me for months, but had found time to fly to Florida the moment her inheritance seemed threatened. "You're right," I said finally. "There's something I haven't told you." Jennifer leaned forward expectantly. 3 days before you and your brothers left me at Sunny Meadows, I received some news. Your Aunt Margaret had passed away." "Dad's sister?" Jennifer frowned. "I thought she died years ago." "No, she's been living quietly in Arizona. We stayed in touch through letters." I paused. "Margaret never had children. When she died, she left everything to me." Jennifer's frown deepened. "Everything? What did she have to leave?" $7 million, I said, watching her eyes widen. $7 million? Jennifer's voice cracked. "You've had $7 million all this time?" I nodded. "And you didn't tell us? You let us put you in that place? You let us worry about how to pay for your care?" The indignation in her voice would have been comical if it weren't so revealing. Not, "You've been suffering in a nursing home unnecessarily," or "You could have been enjoying a better quality of life." No, her concern was that they had worried needlessly about money, and of course that they didn't know about their potential inheritance. I was curious. I wanted to see what would happen if you thought I had nothing to offer you. I wanted to know if you valued me for myself, or only for what you could get from me. "That's manipulative," she accused, her cheeks flushing with anger. "Perhaps," I conceded, "but it was also illuminating." Jennifer stood abruptly, pacing the room. "I need to call Derek and Michael. They should hear this too." "By all means," I said, gesturing toward the balcony. "You can use my phone if you'd like some privacy." While Jennifer made her calls, I prepared a light lunch, cucumber sandwiches and iced tea. I could hear her agitated voice drifting in from the balcony, the words indistinct, but the tone clear. She was angry, shocked, and already calculating. When she returned, her composure somewhat restored, I had the food laid out on the dining table. "They're catching the next flights out," she informed me, sitting down. "Derek is furious." "I imagine he would be," I replied, passing her a sandwich. "He's always been protective of the family finances." Jennifer took the sandwich but didn't eat. "Mom, why did you do this? Why the secrecy, the games?" I took a sip of my tea, considering how to answer. "When your father died, all three of you were too busy to help me sort through his things. When I fell and broke my hip 2 years ago, none of you could take time off work to assist with my recovery. When I mentioned feeling lonely in that big house, you suggested I get a cat, not that I might move closer to any of you." I set my glass down. "Then suddenly, when I was old enough to be inconvenient, but not quite old enough to die, you found a solution that required minimal effort from you. Pack me away in a facility where others would handle the messy business of my aging." "That's not fair," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it?" I countered. "The day you left me at Sunny Meadows, not one of you looked back. Not one of you called that night to see if I was settling in okay. You all went back to your busy, important lives, secure in the knowledge that you'd done your duty." Jennifer had no response. "The inheritance gave me choices. It let me see clearly what my place was in your lives. And it gave me the freedom to decide what happens next." She looked up sharply. "What do you mean, what happens next?" I smiled. "I guess we'll all find out when Derek and Michael arrive, won't we?" Jennifer stared at me as if seeing me for the first time, not as their mother who had always been there in the background of their life, but as a woman with her own thoughts, feelings, and now, power. The balance had shifted, and we both knew it.
Derek and Michael arrived the following morning, both looking harried from hastily arranged flights. Derek stormed into my condo like a man on a mission, his face flushed with anger. $7 million? He demanded without preamble. "You've had $7 million all this time and said nothing?" Michael, more subdued, followed behind him. "Hey, Mom," he said, bending to kiss my cheek. At least one of my children remembered basic manners. I invited them to sit in the living room, where Jennifer was already perched tensely on the sofa. The three of them lined up facing me, a united front for perhaps the first time since they were children. "Would anyone like coffee?" I offered. "I just made a fresh pot." "We didn't fly all the way to Florida for coffee," Derek snapped. "We want an explanation." I poured myself a cup, taking my time. An explanation for what, exactly? For having money? For moving somewhere pleasant? For living my life as I choose? "For lying to us," Jennifer interrupted. "For manipulating us." I took a sip of my coffee, studying my children over the rim of my cup. "I don't recall lying to any of you. I simply didn't volunteer information about my finances, information that, frankly, wasn't any of your business." "Not our business," Derek's voice rose. "You're our mother." "Yes, I am," I agreed. "And that entitles you to my love, my support, my wisdom, when asked for. It doesn't entitle you to my bank account or financial statements." Michael, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell us, Mom? Before Sunny Meadows, I mean. You could have avoided all that." His question seemed genuinely curious rather than accusatory. Of my 3 children, Michael had always been the most thoughtful, the most willing to consider perspectives other than his own. "I planned to," I admitted. "The day you all came to tell me about Sunny Meadows, I had the check in my purse. I was going to surprise you with the news that I could help with your mortgages, set up college funds for the grandchildren. I thought we would celebrate together." I set my cup down, but then I listened to the way you talked about me, like I was a problem to be solved, a burden to be managed. None of you asked what I wanted. None of you considered alternatives that might have kept me in my home with my dignity intact." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "We were trying to do what was best for you." "Were you?" I asked quietly. "Or what was most convenient for you?" No one answered. "When you left me at Sunny Meadows, I watched from the window as you drove away. Not one of you looked back. That moment told me everything I needed to know about my place in your lives." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair." "Perhaps not," I conceded, "but it was clarifying. So I decided to conduct a little experiment. I wanted to see who I was to you without the promise of an inheritance, whether you valued me for myself or only for what I could give you." "That's manipulative," Derek said, echoing his sister's accusation from the day before. "Maybe so," I acknowledged, "but it was also necessary, for me at least." I stood and walked to the sliding glass door that led to my balcony. Outside, palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze, and beyond them I could just glimpse the ocean. "I've learned some things these past few months. I've learned that I'm not ready to be put out to pasture. I've learned that I enjoy my independence. I've learned that I can make new friends, build a new life." I paused, "and I've learned which relationships in my life are genuine and which are transactional." "What does that mean?" Jennifer asked, her voice small. "It means I've made some decisions about my future. And yours." All of them tensed visibly. "I've met with an attorney, Oliver Preston. He's helped me create a new estate plan." Derek leaned forward. "What kind of estate plan?" "One that reflects my values and what I've observed about each of you." "Which means what exactly?" Derek pressed. I returned to my seat, facing them directly. "It means that my estate will be divided as follows. 25% will go to various charities supporting causes I believe in. 25% will be held in trust for my grandchildren's education and well-being, with strict conditions." I paused, letting that sink in. "As for the remaining 50%. They waited, barely breathing. "That depends entirely on you."
"What do you mean it depends on us?" Derek demanded. I smiled. "Oliver helped me create what he calls a living inheritance with conditions. The remainder of my estate will be divided among you three. But how much each of you receives depends on your actions over the next 5 years." "5 years?" Jennifer repeated, stunned. "Yes, during that time, my attorney and I will be evaluating your behavior, not just toward me, but toward others in your lives. Are you kind to service workers? Do you volunteer in your communities? Do you put people before possessions? These things matter to me, and they'll determine your inheritance." That's extortion," Derek sputtered. "Not at all," I replied calmly. "I'm simply aligning my resources with my values. You're all free to live however you choose. Your choices will simply have consequences, as choices usually do in life." Michael, who had been quiet, suddenly laughed, a short, surprised sound. "You know what? That's actually fair." Derek turned on him. "Are you kidding? She's using her money to control us." Michael shook his head. "No, she's using her money to reward the values she believes in. It's her money, Derek. She earned the right to decide where it goes." I felt a surge of affection for my youngest. Perhaps there was hope for him yet. "This is ridiculous," Jennifer declared, standing up. "We're not children to be graded on our behavior." "No, you're not," I agreed. "You're adults who should know better than to warehouse your mother in a nursing home and then show renewed interest only when you discover she has money." Jennifer flushed. "That's not what happened." "Isn't it?" I challenged. "When did you last visit me at Sunny Meadows, Jennifer? Before you knew about the inheritance?" She had no answer. "Look," I said, softening my tone slightly, "this isn't about punishment. It's about growth, about recognizing what truly matters in life. I learned that lesson late, but I did learn it. I'm offering you the chance to learn it too. And if we don't play along with this game, Derek asked, then your share goes to the charities, I said simply. Oliver has already drawn up the paperwork. It's all legal and binding. Derek stood, his face red with anger. This is unbelievable. Come on, Jen, we're leaving. Jennifer hesitated, looking torn, but then rose to follow her brother. At the door, she paused. Mom, She stopped, seemingly unable to find the words. I know, I said gently. It's a lot to process. Take some time. Think about what really matters to you. After they left, Michael remained seated, studying me with newfound interest. You've changed, he observed. Have I, or have I simply stopped pretending to be what everyone expected me to be? He considered this. Maybe both. He paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about Sunny Meadows, about not visiting more, about a lot of things. I know you are, I said. That's why I think there's hope for you yet. He smiled, a genuine smile that reminded me of the boy he had once been. So what now? Do we just go back to our lives and wait for you to grade us? No, I replied. Now we begin to build a real relationship, one based on mutual respect and genuine caring, not obligation or expectation. I like that, he said softly. After Michael left, I called Pearl to update her on what had happened. She laughed delightedly when I described Derek's reaction. Oh, to have been a fly on that wall, she exclaimed. So what do you think will happen now? I'm not sure, I admitted. Derek will probably stay angry. Jennifer might come around eventually. And Michael? I think Michael might surprise us all. And how do you feel? Pearl asked. I considered the question, looking out at the palm trees and blue sky. I felt free. For the first time in decades, completely free. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. I thought about Margaret and what she might think of what I'd done with her gift. I thought she would approve. Money was, after all, just a tool. What mattered was how you used it. I'd spent decades putting everyone else's needs before my own, being the perfect mother, the supportive wife, the obliging grandmother. Now, finally, I was living for myself. The next morning, I woke to a text message from Michael. Taking the kids to the beach this weekend. They'd love to see your new place. So would I. Okay to visit? I smiled as I typed my reply. I'd love that. Bring swimsuits. The pool here is wonderful. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. Not a relationship based on what I could give them, but on simply wanting to spend time together. Perhaps that was the greatest inheritance I could offer. After all, the chance to know what really mattered before it was too late. As I made my morning coffee, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the devastating moment of being abandoned at Sunny Meadows to this new life of my own creation. The path hadn't been straightforward, and there were surely more twists ahead. But for the first time in years, I was excited to see where it might lead.
A month passed. My life in Palm Beach settled into a pleasant rhythm. Morning walks on the beach, afternoon swims in the community pool, evenings spent reading on my balcony or chatting with new friends. Pearl visited for a week, and we explored the area together, trying new restaurants and visiting art galleries. Derek hadn't contacted me since the confrontation in my living room. Jennifer had sent a few stilted text messages, clearly unsure how to proceed in our new reality. But Michael had surprised me, calling regularly and visiting twice with his children. During his second visit, as we watched the kids splash in the pool, he confessed, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about values and what really matters. And, I prompted, and I realized I've been so focused on success, making partner at the firm, the big house, the right schools for the kids, that I've lost sight of why I wanted those things in the first place. He looked at me. I wanted security, sure, but I also wanted my family to be happy. And lately, none of us have been very happy. I nodded, letting him continue. Last week, I turned down a promotion, he said. It would have meant more money, but also 60-hour weeks and frequent travel. Instead, I asked to move to a different department with more regular hours. He smiled ruefully. My boss thought I was having a midlife crisis. And are you? I asked. Maybe, or maybe I'm finally having clarity. He watched his children playing. Lily asked me yesterday if we could have dinner together every night, like we did at your place. She said it was her favorite part of visiting you. I felt tears prick my eyes. Children often see what we miss. Yeah, he agreed softly. They do. Later that evening, after Michael and the children had left, I received an unexpected call from Jennifer. Mom, she said, her voice hesitant. Can we talk? Of course, I replied, settling onto my sofa. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, about what you said, about how we treated you. She paused. I was angry at first. I felt like you were judging us, manipulating us. I understand that, I said. But then I started to actually listen to what you were saying about values and what really matters. Another pause. Last week, I was at this charity gala. You know, the kind where everyone goes to be seen, not because they care about the cause. I know the type, I said dryly. I was sitting there listening to people talk about their vacation homes and private schools, and suddenly I realized I didn't care about any of it. I was just empty. Her voice cracked slightly. And I thought about you, alone, at Sunny Meadows, while I was at spin class or getting my nails done or whatever seemed so important at the time. Jennifer, no, let me finish. I need to say this. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for how I treated you, for who I've become. I heard her swallow hard. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. That's all I've ever wanted, I said softly. Just for you to try. After we hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about forgiveness and second chances. Jennifer's words seemed sincere, but only time would tell if they translated into meaningful change. 2 days later, I received a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Wilson, this is Allison, Derek's wife. Can we meet for coffee? There's something I need to discuss with you. Curious, I agreed. We arranged to meet at a small cafe near my condo the following afternoon. Allison was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, looking uncomfortable. I hadn't seen her since the day they'd left me at Sunny Meadows. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I wasn't sure you would. I was intrigued, I admitted. What can I do for you, Allison? She twisted her wedding ring nervously. Derek doesn't know I'm here. He's still processing everything. I imagine he is, I said dryly. The thing is, she continued, I think you're right about all of it. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. We treated you terribly, discarded you like you didn't matter. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. Derek won't admit it yet, but deep down, he knows it too. He's been different since your conversation. Quieter, reflective. He sighed. He's not sleeping well. The other night, I found him looking at old family photos at 3 a.m. I never wanted to hurt any of you. I just needed you to see what you'd become. I know, she replied, and that's why I'm here. I want to help bridge this gap between you and Derek. He's stubborn and proud, but he loves you. He's just forgotten how to show it. I considered her words. What do you propose? She said, let me work on him. He'll come around eventually. In the meantime, Would you consider having dinner with us next month? Our anniversary. Nothing formal. Just family. I smiled. I'd like that. As I walked home from the cafe, I felt a lightness in my step that had nothing to do with the beautiful weather. The path to reconciliation would be long and uncertain, but the first steps had been taken. That evening, I called Oliver to update him on recent developments. "It sounds promising," he said when I'd finished. "Though I'll remind you that people often make changes when money is at stake, only to revert to old patterns once it's secured." "I'm aware," I replied. "That's why the 5-year timeline is so important. This isn't about a quick fix or a temporary change. It's about fundamental values." "Well, you've certainly given them something to think about," he chuckled. "And what about you? How are you finding your new life?" I looked around my comfortable condo, at the books I was finally finding time to read, the art supplies I'd purchased for a class I was taking, the calendar marked with social engagements and volunteer commitments. I'm finding that it's never too late to start again, to become the person you were meant to be all along. After we hung up, I stepped out onto my balcony. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. A warm breeze carried the scent of salt and flowers. I thought about Margaret and her unexpected gift. Not just the money, but the opportunity it had given me to reclaim my life, to redefine my relationships, to discover who I was beyond the roles of mother and grandmother. I thought about my children and the long road ahead of us. There would be setbacks and disappointments, moments of connection and moments of frustration. But for the first time in years, there was also possibility. Pearl had been right that day at Sunny Meadows when she called my plan a small coup. I had staged a revolution, not against my family, but against the person I'd allowed myself to become, the woman who accepted less than she deserved, the woman who put everyone else's needs before her own. That woman was gone now. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and unafraid to demand respect. As the last light faded from the sky and the first stars appeared, I made a silent promise to myself. Whatever happened with my children, whatever the future held, I would never again forget my own worth. Some lessons come late in life, but better late than never.